On our wedding night, my wife insisted that we exchange our deepest secrets. She claimed it would help us understand each other better. Unable to resist her persistent coaxing and pleading, I eventually nodded in agreement. However, I never could have imagined that the very first sentence out of her mouth would be such a massive shock. Husband, actually, I've KILLED someone before. Thank you for choosing Whispering with Pineapple, a place where you can relax while listening to stories, practice your English listening skills, and check translations through both Vietnamese and English versions. If there are any errors during the translation process, we welcome your feedback. To motivate us to create more videos in the future, we hope you will give us a like and subscribe to receive notifications for our new releases. Wishing you all a wonderful time listening to the story and relaxing moments with Pineapple. My name is Joan Bin, 40 years old, an obscure detective novelist. My wife is Lu Ying, 25 years old, a psychological assistant. She is very beautiful. From the first moment I saw her, I felt as though we had known each other before. Her personality is also wonderful. Not only did she not mind that I was 15 years older than her, but she also never looked down on an aging man like me who was still empty-handed with a lackluster career. In the beginning, due to those objective reasons, I thought I wasn't worthy of her, but her pursuit was incredibly intense. Before long, I completely succumbed. She said she liked my appearance, specifically the break in the tail of my eyebrow, which made me look more rugged and bohemian. She even liked my novels. She always told me, "One day, you will definitely be famous." I knew they were words of comfort, but my heart still felt immensely warm. Before her, I had never encountered a choice so passionate and steadfast. After only 1 month, we walked down the aisle together. After dealing with a busy wedding day, we lay on the bed, finally having a brief moment of rest. She rolled over to lie on top of me, using her hand to gently stroke my eyelashes. "Husband, your eyelashes are really long." As she spoke, her hand slid from my eyes, over my cheeks, neck, and down to my chest. I grabbed her hand, shifting from passive to active, pressing her down beneath me. "Your husband doesn't just have long eyelashes, you know." I gazed into her smiling eyes, leaning down, slowly bringing my lips close to hers. Suddenly, she placed a finger on my lips to stop me, seemingly having just thought of something interesting. "Husband, why don't we exchange secrets?" I was bewildered. My mood suddenly dampened. I turned over to sit leaning against the headboard. "Exchange secrets?" "That's right." She blinked, continuing. "We're already married, yet we still don't know each other's little secrets. Why the sudden urge to exchange secrets?" I frowned slightly. I didn't understand why. At such a crucial moment, she wanted to do something so pointless. I just saw it recently while scrolling through short videos. It said there are many benefits. For example, it can quickly close the distance and make feelings heat up faster. Understanding each other's true selves better avoids a face flip after marriage. It enhances the sense of belonging and exclusivity for both sides. You know, I studied psychology. Doing an experiment with your wife isn't too much to ask, right? Does it absolutely have to be now? I showed clear reluctance. "Please come on, hubby." She leaned close to my face and gave me a light kiss. Please, okay, hubby?" A woman's acting cute really does work. My resolve vanished in an instant. I nodded. All right, I'm truly afraid of you." Seeing me agree, she giggled. "Husband is the best." Then she leaned against me, continuing to fiddle with my eyelashes. "Husband, actually, I've KILLED someone before." I didn't expect her to drop such a blockbuster right at the start. My heart tightened, and my expression involuntarily froze. She seemed to notice my change. She immediately stroked my chest gently. Don't be nervous, husband. Listen to me tell it to you slowly." Lu Ying's secret. I was born in a small, remote village in the London region. It was damp all year round, and there's only one path into the village. Most of my childhood memories are inseparable from that village. Since I can remember, my mother was a madwoman. She often let her hair hang loose, hiding in the shadows behind the door, or she would squat at the entrance of the village, mechanically doodling on the ground with her fingers. Mother was the youngest in the family. Her 3 older sisters had all married off and had no contact with the family throughout the year. My maternal grandfather was a short-tempered old man, holding a broken tobacco pipe all day. Daily, besides visiting neighbors, he only sat in the courtyard basking in the sun. He viewed my mother as the greatest shame of his life. Money-losing brat was the only name he had for her. If she wasn't crazy and hadn't given birth to me, he probably still hoped to use her to trade for a bride price. But unfortunately, life has no ifs. Whenever he drank, he would slap her face until it burned. He cursed her for shaming the ancestors, calling her a rotten money loser in a puddle of mud. Mother never fought back. She only knew how to cower behind the kitchen stove, letting out muffled whimpers like a kitten. My maternal grandmother, though heartbroken, could only stand aside, wiping her tears. I, on the contrary, could understand her. In those days, women in the family essentially had no status. I once asked my grandmother who my father was. Hearing this, she was so scared she shivered. She forcefully covered my mouth, telling me never to mention it again. She said that person was a name not allowed to be spoken in this house. Just mentioning it would bring bad luck to the whole family. Whenever my mother heard the word father, her madness grew worse. She would scream frantically, desperately tearing her own clothes. She would even ram her head into the wall until fresh blood flowed. My grandfather, hearing this, would only give a cold, slight laugh and spit on the ground. He said that profligate man had long been punished by heaven, dying in the wilderness, his flesh eaten clean by insects. When saying these words, his eyes were filled with loathing and resentment. I grew up in such an environment, looking at my mother's face, which should have been delicate, but was now full of hardship. Countless times in the dark of night, I pinched my own thigh. Even though it hurt until tears flowed, I didn't dare make a sound. I swore I would study hard to leave this place and cure her. I wanted to take her away from this man-eating place. That became the sole pillar helping me continue living. To succeed and leave, I staked my life on my studies. Yet, the heavens didn't seem to have any intention of being gentler with me. At school, I was the daughter of the madwoman. That label was stuck firmly to my back. There was no way to peel it off. Classmates would surround me, singing insulting nursery rhymes. They tore up my textbooks and threw them into the latrine. Some even put dead rat carcasses in my pencil case. Even the teachers, when handing out test papers on the podium, didn't want to touch my hand. Once, a few girls blocked my way in the school's backyard. They mocked me for being fatherless and ridiculed my mother as a loose woman. They grabbed my hair and spat in my face. I grit my teeth until they bled, staring straight at them. The leader was spooked by my gaze and slapped my face hard. I didn't cry. I only silently engraved everything they did into my heart. I was even thinking about how much strength it would take to snap their necks. After they got tired of hitting me, they stole all my living allowance. Those dark days I endured for 6 long years. Words as cold as sharp knives kept carving into my heart. I became increasingly morose and silent. I began to research psychology books. I wanted to know where the malice of these people came from, and I also wanted to know the truth behind why my mother went mad. I became like a cat hidden in the shadows, quiet and sharp. My heart was filled with a thirst for revenge. I learned how to observe each person in the night, observing their expressions, pondering their weaknesses. I recorded these names on the last page of my diary. That was my hunting list. At that time, I knew how to camouflage. In the eyes of others, I was just a well-behaved, excellent student. Only I knew that inside me then, a demon resided. The leader was named Su Qing. She loved beauty excessively. I secretly added something to the skin cream she often used. It wasn't poisonous, but it could make her skin itch. She started scratching until it left raw red streaks. I walked past her. I only left one sentence. "There's a smell of a dead rat on you." She froze, frantically sniffing herself. The next day, I made the whole class smell that scent. Actually, I had just hidden a piece of rotting meat in a blind spot inside her desk. But I kept staring at her. Everyone kept staring at her. Su Qing began to bathe frantically, 5 times a day. Her skin was frayed, oozing drops of blood. She felt everyone was laughing at her for being stinky. She started talking to herself, standing in front of the mirror, slapping her own face. A month later, she dropped out of school. I heard she had to enter a mental hospital, scrubbing her skin every day. As for the lackeys, I didn't spend much effort. I only sent each of them an anonymous letter. The contents were entirely the secrets they had used to insult each other behind their backs. All of it was what I had accidentally overheard normally. They began to cut each other off and tear into one another. Right in the hallway, they grabbed hair, slapped faces, and splashed ink on each other. Finally, no one wanted to look at anyone else. They looked like a bunch of defeated fighting roosters. In the summer of my 14th year, a big event happened in the village. The city wanted to develop Peach Blossom Mountain to build a forest park. The day the excavators entered the site, the whole village went to watch. I passed by after school and saw a group of people gather halfway up the mountain. When the excavator dug the foundation, it unearthed a set of white bones. The skull was smashed so badly, it was deformed beyond recognition. That skeleton was buried right under a pile of rubble. Dug up along with it was a laminated student ID card. Though severely damaged, the handwriting was still recognizable. That day, the local newspaper published the photo. At the name position on the ID card, the character Wu could be faintly seen. The night the photo was released, my mother went completely mad. She kept kowtowing to that newspaper. Her forehead hit the cement floor, making sharp thud-thud sounds. She frantically screamed a name, Wu Jia. That was the first time I heard her call out a full name. My grandfather's face changed. He snatched the newspaper and burned it all. That night, the house was terrifyingly quiet. However, strange things since that day never stopped. Every New Year's Eve, an envelope was always stuffed under our door. Inside was a thick stack of cash, neatly arranged. Every year on International Children's Day, June 1st, I still receive gifts at school. Sometimes it was expensive paintbrushes, sometimes pretty dresses, and even backpacks. Those packages were all sent from elsewhere. The detailed address had been intentionally crossed out. The sender's name was Ma. I suddenly thought, perhaps my father wasn't dead. He had made a fortune outside, but for some reason, he couldn't show his face. He could only use this way to provide for the family and silently love me. This thought became the motivation for my studies. Relying on that money, I finished high school. I was admitted to the best university in the province and chose psychology as my major. I wanted to help my mother recover. I wanted to personally lift the veil of truth that made her go mad. And I had to find out who that person surnamed Ma really was. The year I was 22, my mother's illness worsened. I returned to my hometown to care for her. By then, I was a mature psychology graduate student. I had mastered techniques of hypnosis, suggestion, and subconscious intervention. Under my psychological treatment, Mother's condition showed positive changes. I thought it was time to personally unveil the truth. Taking advantage of her weakened state, I hypnotized her. It was a battle of wits between us. Her subconscious was covered by a thick layer of ice. It was extreme fear, a destructive psychological wound. I patiently guided her again and again, taking her back to the starting point of her madness. In the dream, Mother's whole body trembled, cold sweat soaking the pillow. From her throat came tragic cries like a wild beast. Finally, she uttered 3 disjointed syllables. Those were the surnames of 3 people, the code key to opening the truth. Wu, Jean, Ma. I sat on the edge of the bed, my whole body getting goosebumps in an instant. Wu probably referred to Wu Jia. As for Jean, there was currently no clue. I remembered the sender of the Children's Day gifts also seemed to be Ma. At that moment, a surge of intense joy rose in my heart. I felt that this person surnamed Ma must be my father. Maybe he survived the accident that year. He didn't dare show his face, but was secretly protecting me from behind. This thought filled me with drive. Wu Jia was dead. Jean was unknown. Ma was perhaps the only clue to unveil the truth. I began to utilize my supervisor's connections and professional methods to investigate. Finally, in an old, yellowed file, I locked onto a name, Ma Jun. Later, through character profiling and big data screening, I finally found him in a neighboring city. That day, my heart was full of hope. I even bought tea as a gift for father. I thought he must have his own hardships. He certainly missed me and my mother. I followed the address, knocking on the old iron door. The moment the door opened, all my illusions vanished. The man named Ma June didn't look like me at all. Moreover, from the first look at me, his pupils constricted like needle points. He wasn't happy, didn't shed tears, but had a fear that was almost desperate. He looked as if he had just seen a demon coming for his life, his whole body collapsing to the floor. Before I could even open my mouth to call out, he began to frantically kowtow in front of me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. His voice was hoarse and unpleasant, like the sound of a grindstone on sandpaper. I stood in the narrow hallway, looking at this deranged middle-aged man. I tried to use hypnosis techniques to help him calm down, to ask about the truth of that year. But just hearing my mother's name, he completely lost control. He grabbed his own hair, smashed things around the room, his mouth constantly screaming two names, Wu Jia and Jinwu. He said that year he didn't dare act. He only stood by and watched. He said he had lived his whole life in the shadow of that event. Suddenly, he forcefully pushed open the window and jumped onto the balcony. I screamed and rushed to hold it back. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes showing only relief. That person is still not dead. That was the last thing he left behind. Right after, in front of me, he plunged down like a kite with a broken string. The dull sound of hitting the ground became the nightmare that haunted me my whole life. I looked at the pool of blood spreading at the base of the building, the illusion of a heroic father, in my heart completely shattered. I also finally understood. Ma Jun was not my father. He was just an accomplice scared out of his wits. The money he sent was not love, but a compensation fee trying to find some spiritual comfort. After Lu Ying finished telling her story, her body trembled slightly. Her hand was still placed on my chest, her fingertips ice cold. The girl who once traveled with hope to find her kin, but instead witnessed an accomplice jump to his death, was now huddling in my arms. I felt my heart skip a beat. Each throb seemed to collide with a heavy secret. I reached out to hold her shoulders, tightening my embrace a bit more. Don't be afraid, it's all over. Husband, I'm thirsty. She suddenly interrupted me, her tone becoming coy. She pointed toward 2 glasses of warm milk on the nightstand. They were probably something she had prepared before getting into bed. The rims of the glasses were still emitting faint white steam. Can you get a glass for me? I obediently took a glass. She accepted one and took a small sip. Then, right in front of me, she took a mouthful of liquid from the other glass into her mouth. She sat on my lap, her long hair falling over her collarbone, carrying a faint scent of shampoo. Then, she leaned down, her slightly cold lips pressing against mine. The warm liquid followed her tongue into my mouth. The rich sweetness of honey overpowered the creamy aroma of the milk. I swallowed greedily. Lu Ying licked her lips contentedly, her finger gently tilting my chin up. Is it good? I nodded, finishing the rest of the milk. I only felt a surge of heat in my lower abdomen, but immediately after, a very slight dizziness transmitted from deep within my brain. I thought it was just fatigue after a busy day, and didn't pay it much mind. Lu Ying leaned back into my arms, her fingers absent-mindedly drawing circles on my chest. Husband, my secrets have all been told to you. She looked up at me. Under the moonlight, her pupils were terrifyingly bright. Now it's your turn. Zhongbin's secret. I was born in Xiapa village. It was deep in a valley. Getting in or out required trekking through forests and crossing undulating mountains. My father died early. My mother worked the fields and raised me alone. I was a quiet person, always living as an outsider in the village. In the countryside, people valued physical strength and loud talkers. A thin, weak boy who couldn't do work properly like me was respected by no one. My only hobby was writing. The family had no money to buy paper, so I looked for old newspapers used for wallpaper. Wherever there was white space, I would write. I wrote about becoming a great hero, about being able to fly high and far away from these towering mountains. Only when immersed in words did I feel I was truly living. The teachers at school thought I had mental problems. They said a rural child dreaming of these useless things all day would eventually starve to death. Mother also scolded me, saying my mind wasn't on the fields and I would amount to nothing. I also felt I was useless. I just wanted to hide in my own words, not wanting to socialize with anyone. I thought that if I were quiet enough, others would forget my existence. But I was wrong. In the eyes of those wicked people, silence was a type of sin, and reticence was an invitation. They felt that bullying someone who never fought back, like me, brought the most satisfaction. Fongjun was the first to charge into my world. He was like me, a left-behind child. He looked very robust, but his mind was slow and his studies were a mess. Because he was foolish, he was always made fun of by the bad students in class. We two useless people naturally gravitated toward each other. After school, we often hid behind the stone mill at the back of the village. That was our secret base. I sat by the stone mill, taking out my old newspapers. I read to him word by word the martial arts dreams I had written. Fongjun listened very intently. His eyes were wide open. That was the expression he only had when listening to stories. At the exciting parts, he would slap his thigh hard. "Zhongbin, you write so well. It's just like a TV drama." That was the sentence he said most often. In those dark days, Fongjun was my only audience. He once promised that when I published a book, he would be my #1 fan. We lay side by side on a haystack, looking at the stars. We vowed to pass the middle school entrance exam together and leave this village. At that time, I felt as long as Fongjun was listening, I could keep writing forever. I believed he was my good brother for life. After entering middle school, the malice upgraded. The leader was named Sujia. His father was a small manager at the brick kiln in town. His family built a large, bright-tiled house. His family even bought him the first mountain bike in the village. His better family conditions gave him a natural sense of superiority among the poor children. He turned bullying me and Fongjun into regular entertainment. Initially, he just rode his bike from behind and rammed into us, watching us tumble into the stinking ditch by the road. He sat on the saddle laughing hysterically. Then he began to push further. He forcibly stole the pickled vegetables my mother prepared and threw them straight into the manure pit in front of me. Or in winter, he ordered his lackeys to hide our shoes. He forced us to stand barefoot on the cold, muddy ground to listen to his conceited, dirty jokes. Once he complained that I didn't bow my head while walking. He grabbed my hair and ground my face hard against the rough dirt wall. When blood flowed, he just curled his lip, saying people of my lowly status even had stinking blood. Fongjun always cowered at the back. After that incident, he silently handed me a crumpled piece of toilet paper. He pulled my sleeve, whispering, "Zhongbin, don't go head-to-head with him. His family has backers, we can't touch them. Just endure until graduation." I thought we two cowards leaning on each other for warmth could maintain it until the end. Until that Friday afternoon. On the dirt mound behind the practice field, Sujia and his group blocked us again. He had just finished a cigarette, his face bearing a savage look. From his pocket, he pulled out half a boiled sweet potato. It was his leftover. He casually threw the potato onto the dusty ground. Then he raised his foot and stomped hard on that potato a few times. He used force to twist his toe. The sole of his shoe grinding against the hard ground made a sharp sound, until that piece of sweet potato, along with mud, sand, grass roots, and unnamed filth, were completely blended together. It turned into a black, mushy pile of mud. Sujia squatted down and spat a thick glob of phlegm onto that mud. He looked at us, pointed at that filthy mess, and flashed a cruel smile. "Let's play a game," he said. "Whoever eats this whole pile of mushy potato and then pees on the other person will be my brother from now on, and no one will dare bully you. Otherwise, I'll break your legs." I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my flesh. I thought to myself I would risk all. At most, I'd be beaten to death. But before I could move, Fongjun acted first. He almost rolled and crawled to his knees, crawling to that pile of mush. He didn't look at me, but like a starving stray dog, he licked clean that mixture of phlegm and dirt. Then he stood up, trembling as he unzipped his pants. When the warm liquid with a pungent smell of urine drenched my pant leg, I didn't dodge or shrink back. I only stared intently at Fongjun. His eyes, which were once clear and bright when listening to stories, were now full of lowly flattery and the luck of having survived a disaster. Since that day, I became a true orphan. I began to skip school. I didn't want to see Feng Jun anymore. That once familiar face, now, only made me feel nauseous. I didn't want to see Su Jia either, especially not the classmates who always cheered and laughed nearby. Every day, I left home with my backpack, pretending to go to school, but actually went into the mountains. On the western slope of Peach Blossom Mountain, I found a steep cliff. It was overgrown with thorny, wild apple trees and weeds higher than my knees. There was essentially no path. Adults complained there was no wood to chop. Students complained it ruined their shoes. Even shepherds didn't bother coming this way. I used both hands and feet to climb over those rubble slopes. Under the cliff, I found a natural rock hollow. The hollow was only half human height. A person huddling inside fit perfectly. This place could shelter from rain and block wind. This became my secret base. I secretly brought matches and candles from home, and the stacks of old newspapers I had collected. I stuffed these into the rock crevices and pressed them down with stones. Every day, I came here on time, just like going to work. In the rock hollow, I spread out the newspapers, holding a worn-down pencil, and wrote frantically. I wrote scenes of Su Jia being pushed off a cliff by me, and Feng Jun being stepped on by me, begging for mercy. Every time I finished a passage of killing, I felt the grievance in my heart partially relieved. After writing, I would tear those newspapers into scraps smaller than fingernails. I stuffed the scraps into the deepest crevices, or buried them under thick dry leaves. Sometimes, when tired of writing, I squatted on the ground. Using my nails or a small twig, I wrote names on the dirt. I wrote Su Jia's name. Every time I finished writing it once, I smashed it once with a stone. Then, I wrote Feng Jun's name right next to it. Every time I wrote a character, my heart trembled with hatred. When the ground was full, I used my palm to smooth the dirt until no trace remained. Then I continued to write, then continued to erase. Only by doing this did I feel safe. The mountain wind whistled through the crevices. But to me, this place was 10,000 times quieter than the school practice field. Here there was no bullying, no betrayal, and no pungent smell of urine that couldn't be washed away. I even tried digging a shallow, rectangular hole in the hollow. I lay in the hole, closed my eyes, imagining myself rotted into a white skeleton. I felt dying here would be good, not needing to face tomorrow, nor those disgusting people. I wrote hatred into the ground and buried it myself. I told myself that as long as this hate remained, I couldn't die yet. In this place no one knew. I wanted to rehearse the death of all of them. This was my only territory, my fortress against the world. I met her late one afternoon after a thunderstorm. That afternoon, Su Jia had stolen my last $2 of living allowance at the school gate. That was money to buy dry rations for the whole week. I ran straight to the secret base, crawling into the hollow. Looking at the revenge characters on the muddy ground, I sobbed loudly. I felt life had no hope left. This world was nothing but a muddy puddle or a deep abyss. Suddenly, the crying was interrupted by light footsteps. A pair of cloth shoes, washed until they were faded white and slightly frayed, stopped in my line of sight. I looked up in terror, thinking Su Jia's group had followed me. But what I saw was a girl. She carried a worn-out drawing board on her back, standing by the rocks. In her hand was a handkerchief embroidered with small flowers, held out to me. "Don't cry anymore," she said. Her voice was very soft, as if afraid to startle me. I didn't take the handkerchief, but used my rough sleeve to wipe my tears. "Who are you? How did you find this place?" I looked at her with suspicion. "My name is Luing. I came here to draw." She pointed at the board. "It's quiet here, no one bothers me." I hurriedly used my hand to erase the names on the muddy ground. She asked nothing, just sat down beside me, opened her board and began sketching. Under her pen, the cliff that was once fierce and desolate seemed to suddenly become much gentler. For the first time, I felt this dark and cramped place could actually be so beautiful. That day, she shared half of the white bun she brought. The bun was cold and hard, but in my stomach, it felt incredibly warm. Since then, my secret base had one more person. I read my stories to her, and she drew pictures of the world in my imagination. The feeling of being abandoned by the world seemed to fade. I once thought, How great it would be if time just stopped at those moments. But tragedy always strikes when one is least prepared. On that June 1st of that year, it should have been a holiday for children, a day of laughter. But for two children pushed into a corner like us, it was the start of a nightmare. Sujia and his lackeys found the hollow. As we were sharing a piece of dry bread, their shadows suddenly covered the entrance. He laughed triumphantly, his eyes showing clear cruelty. Tiske. Turns out you two were hiding here for a date. He kicked away Lu Ying's drawing board and stomped on the manuscripts I cherished most. He grabbed Lu Ying's hair, forcing her to look at him. You bitch, usually acting so high and mighty. Turns out you like this kind of trash. I frantically rushed to save her, but was pinned down by his lackeys. I could only watch as he used the filthiest words to insult Lu Ying. He pulled a small digital camera from his pocket, an extreme luxury then. Let me take some souvenir photos for you two, to see if you'll ever dare show your faces again. Lu Ying trembled violently, her eyes full of a desperation I had never seen before. Right then, Feng Jun appeared. He stood at the entrance, pale and breathing heavily. Su Jie saw him, his smile becoming more twisted. Feng Jun is here? Come quickly. Today I'll open your eyes. Feng Jun looked at me, then at Lu Ying, his hands clenched so hard they shook. Su Jie gave the camera to Feng Jun. You take the pictures. Make them clear. If you mess up, I'll make you practice yourself. Feng Jun tremblingly took the camera. He didn't dare look into my eyes. The gun of his conscience seemed choked by fear. Lu Ying began to scream, struggling desperately. That resistance seemed to further stimulate the animalistic nature in Su Jie. He began to tear Lu Ying's clothes. I was like a beast driven into a corner, roaring, ramming my head into those pinning me down. I don't know where the strength came from, but I broke free from the two lackeys and rushed frantically towards Su Jie. In the chaos, I picked up a sharp stone and stabbed it hard into his neck with all my might. Hot blood spurted, splashing all over my face. Su Jie's triumphant laughter cut out instantly. He clutched his neck, his eyes rolling back, collapsing like a ruined tower. The lackeys were terrified, screaming and scattering. Only the three of us remained in the hollow, with the gasping breath of death spreading. Su Jie was dead. He lay motionless in a pool of blood, eyes still wide, seemingly unable to believe he died at the hands of the trash he despised. Lu Ying huddled in a corner, crying and trembling as she put her torn clothes back on. As for Feng Jun, he was still holding the camera, frozen like a stone statue. Zhongbin, you can't LED someone. His voice shook so much it was barely audible. I looked at my bloodied hands. I felt no fear, only a liberation I'd never had before. He deserved to die, I said coldly. But immediately after, Feng Jun did something I never expected. He suddenly raised the camera, frantically pressing the delete button. I didn't take anything. I didn't see anything. You can't LED him. It has nothing to do with me. He screamed like a madman, then threw the camera off the cliff and turned to run for his life. I looked at his retreating back, my heart full of infinite irony. Was this the good brother I once wanted to leave the village with? I helped Lu Ying up. She didn't look at Su Jie's corpse but stared at me, her eyes red but incredibly steadfast. Zhongbin, we can't stay here anymore. I understood her. With Su Jie's family power, if caught, I'd certainly pay with my life. Together we pushed Su Jie's body down the 10,000-foot cliff. Then, I used sand to cover the blood in the hollow, erasing all traces of a struggle. Don't tell anyone. Act as if this never happened. Lu Ying held my hand tightly, her voice shaking but heavy. I nodded. That night, I sneaked home, gathered the meager royalties I'd saved, and quietly left the village in the dark. I began the life of a fugitive. To hide my identity, I changed my name and did the hardest jobs in foreign lands. I didn't dare contact my mother, nor look back at that village even once. Years passed, and I thought I had buried that past in the dust, until I met Lu Ying again in this city. She had become a talented psychologist, and I was using the alias Zhongbin to restart my life. Our reunion felt like a setup of fate. We quickly married, leaning on each other to soothe past scars. But the secret I just told Lu Ying actually still has a half unrevealed. The dizziness in my brain became increasingly intense. I looked at Lu Ying, seeing the smile on her lips gradually become strange under the moonlight. "Husband, do you know why I chose to study psychology?" she asked softly, her tone so gentle it made one's hair stand on end. "To heal wounds." I laboriously forced out a few words. Lu Ying shook her head, her finger lightly gliding over my face. "No, it's for control. I wanted to find the person who made my mother go mad that year. Do you remember the name Jean Wu that my mother mentioned during hypnosis?" My heart suddenly tightened. Jean Wu. Jean Wu. That is my father's real name. He didn't die in an accident. He was pursued by a group of people, and among them was a person surnamed Zhong. My eyelids were heavy. My whole body had no strength left. I realized in horror that the milk had been drugged by her. My mother didn't go mad because of my father's death. It was because she witnessed him being cornered by those Zhong people, and then one of them personally pushed him off the abyss. Lu Ying stood up, taking an old, yellowed photo from a drawer. In the photo was a kind-looking middle-aged man standing next to her mother when she was young. After finding Ma Jun, he told me everything. The leader of the pursuit was Su Jie's father, and the one who directly acted was your father. You thought UKI LED Su Jie to save me? No, that was fate. UKI LED him, just as your father harmed mine. I wanted to explain, but my throat was as if squeezed shut. Wu Jie is dead. Ma Jun also jumped in front of me. Now, only you're left, Zhongbin. She slowly leaned down, whispering in my ear, her breath cold as ice. Do you remember the rectangular hole you dug in the rock? I found it, and I've prepared an identical home for you right here in this basement. As for the white bones under Peach Blossom Mountain, if I'm not mistaken, that was the real Su Jie. The poor soul UKI LED to silence him, who bore the name of a murderer for over 20 years. I thought all clues were lost because you were too clever and erased all traces. Until the day I interned at the psychological clinic. I accidentally saw the name, Zhongbin, on the appointment list. Because of nightmares and hallucinations lasting years, you had no choice but to seek a doctor's help. Due to confidentiality, I couldn't hear a word from the lead doctor. So I wove an identity, designed a chance encounter. Using the purity and steadfastness you loved most as bait, I let you personally marry me. Initially, I only wanted to hear the truth. But I never imagined the truth was far more lowly and cruel than I thought. You actually wore the skin of a victim to cover the truth. I stand up, looking down at the man, lying on the bed like a pile of slush. I am a psychological assistant, and hypnosis is what I'm best at. Zhongbin listened to my voice. I whispered close to his ear, my tone calm but cold, as if reading a death sentence. You are a sinner. You harmed Lu Shu, you harmed Su Jie. The rest of your life will be spent in rotting mud until you personally end this. In 1 week, you will begin to doubt my identity. You will secretly take a long hair of mine, going mad to find the truth. The moment you see the DNA report, discovering I am your daughter, you will completely collapse, leave a suicide note, and jump from the building. I planted a poisonous tumor in his subconscious. In the following days, I would watch it sprout, bloom, and finally harvest his life. Over the next few days, Zhongbin's spirit became dazed. He kept secretly staring at me. In those eyes was fear, doubt, and a desire for verification that was almost insane. I knew the suggestions I planted were taking effect. He started rummaging through the house to collect my fallen hairs. He even secretly hid the toothbrush I used in the bathroom. I sat on the sofa, holding a Freud psychology work. At the corner of my lips, a cold, meaningful smile flickered. Calculating the time, the expedited DNA results should have been in his hands today. At 3 in the afternoon, a heavy and rapid knocking on the door broke the silence. I put down the book and went to open the door. Standing there were 2 police officers with stern faces. Are you Lu Ying? The lead officer showed his badge, his voice deepening. The wife of Zhongbin? It's me. I maintained the calm and confusion a newlywed wife should have. Is something wrong? My husband is away on business and hasn't returned yet. Zhongbin is dead. Exactly 4 hours ago, he fell from the roof of the studio he rented, dying instantly. The officer stared at my eyes, observing my reaction. We found a suicide note on him, along with some other documents. We need you to cooperate with the investigation. My heart skipped a beat at that moment, not from grief, but from the extreme fever of a plan rewarded. It succeeded. The plan was precise to the millimeter. Zhongbin, that demon who lived with crime for over 20 years, finally chose to end himself in despair upon knowing the truth. I bowed my head, covering my mouth, my body trembling slightly. I forced out a few fake tears. How could it be? How could this happen? We found a DNA test report at the scene. The officer pulled a crumpled paper from the file. Because he clutched it while falling, there's a dark red blood stain on the edge. Before jumping, Zhongbin wrote a very long suicide note, confessing to all the crimes at Peach Blossom Mountain over 20 years ago. The officer held the report before me, his gaze deep, as if judging. I reached out my trembling hand to take the report. Through testing between Sample A, Zhongbin, and Sample B, Luing, there is no biological blood relationship, excluding the possibility of a father-daughter relationship. I was stunned. At that moment, I felt something in my brain go snap. This is impossible, I blurted out instinctively. What I expected to see was the conclusion confirming a biological blood relationship. In that perfect hypnosis session, I hadn't just ordered him to commit suicide. I also used suggestion to make him firmly believe it was the child Lu Shu was pregnant with that year, his own daughter. Only by letting him realize he was not just a rapist and a killer, but also a beast who wanted to commit incest, could his last bit of survival will be shattered. Ms. Liu, what do you mean by impossible? The officer stared at me, eyes sharp as a razor. I stood frozen, my fingers clutching the report. Cold sweat ran down my spine. I thought I was a judge of justice. I thought I used the scalpel of psychology to precisely cut the demon's throat. But this report was like a burning slap, shattering all my calculations into 100 pieces. If Zhongbin wasn't my biological father, why did he admit to those crimes under hypnosis? Why even seek death for a non-existent incestuous relationship? I looked up, wiping the fake tears from my face. My gaze instantly recovered its calm, the rationality and coldness gained from a long time in psychological research. Officer, I have something to say. I placed the blood-stained report on the table, taking a deep breath. The death of Zhongbin was planned entirely by me. The two officers opposite were stunned. One quickly turned on his body camera. I sat on the sofa, confessing everything. I confessed what my mother, Lu Shu, had to endure. I confessed my investigation process over the years. I confessed our dialogue on the wedding night, as well as my deep hypnosis and psychological suggestion on him. I made him doubt that I was the child of him and Lu Shu. I used his guilt and fear to give the suicide instruction, but I didn't directly kill him. I only guided him to the end he deserved. I looked at the serious faces of the officers. As a psychological assistant, I know the boundaries of the law very well. Intervention and enticement to suicide are extremely difficult to gather evidence for, especially in a complex old case like this. I had no intention of escaping the law. My only goal was the truth. I don't care how you charge me, whether it's attempted murder or disturbing public order, but I must make it clear, who exactly was Zhongbin? What was the truth back then? The officer was silent for a long time. The room fell into a deathly stillness. The lead officer exchanged glances with his colleague, then took a thick stack of photocopied documents from his briefcase. This is what we found at the scene. The suicide note written by Zhongbin's own hand. To be precise, it's a confession. He gave the letter to me. Ms. Liu, perhaps you were wrong from the start. I took the papers. It was Zhongbin's familiar handwriting, a bit sloppy, reflecting a desperate tremble. I looked at the first line. Luing, when you see this letter, I am probably dead. Actually, the night you told me those secrets, I already knew who you were. The game of removing a radical from your name was truly clumsy. You thought your hypnosis worked. No, it was because I myself wanted to die. My pupils constricted violently. My fingers began to shake uncontrollably. The page turned. The truth was like rotted flesh torn away, revealing the whitest and bloodiest bones. The suicide note. Actually, I am not Zhongbin. My name is Sujia. The real Zhongbin died, 25 years ago, in that thunderstorm, Lu Shu was the only light in my dark world. How could I bear to extinguish her personally? That day I indeed fainted. Cruel things indeed happened. At the moment Zhongbin held the pencil to my neck to threaten me. At the moment I watched the light in Lu Shu's eyes gradually fade. I went mad. I snatched the pencil from Zhongbin's hand. I eagerly stabbed it into his throat. 1, 2, 3 times. I don't remember how many times. I only remember blood spraying like a broken faucet. By the time I calmed down, Lu Shu was already mad, and Fengbin had run away. After that, I smashed Zhongbin's head and left my student ID there. I buried him under the rubble. Then I carried Lu Shu back to the entrance of your village. What followed you already know. As for why I didn't tell you the truth on our wedding night, it's because then I didn't know the truth myself. After fleeing here, I didn't just fall into solitude again, but bore a human life on my back. Long-term pressure caused my memory to shift. I always thought I was a rapist on the run, until I saw the DNA report, confirming you were not my daughter. My memory recovered. I am not a rapist. I did not wrong her. But the title of murderer, I don't want to carry either. I just wanted to be an ordinary person who could tell stories. I hope in the next life I can have my wish. Finally, I hope your mother can recover soon. That secret at Peach Blossom Mountain, let it follow me and shatter into the cement floor. Signed, Sujia. The police left. Only a deathly silence remained in the study. I sat dazed in the chair Sujia used to sit in, clutching the suicide note. The paper was soaked with sweat. The writing became blurred. The truth was like a blunt knife, carving up my perception of the past 25 years. The one I wanted to kill was the only one who ever protected my mother. The one I wanted revenge on had long ago rotted deep in the earth. That was the real Zhongbin. The next day, I went to the police station again. No interrogation, no handcuffs. I sat at the desk, sincerely confessing every detail. The lead officer was silent for a long time after hearing it. Ms. Liu, your behavior was very dangerous. He spoke, his voice a bit hoarse. But legally, Su Jie voluntarily walked his end. In his confession, he wrote clearly that his spirit had already collapsed. He crushed his cigarette, sighing softly. Go now. This case is too old. The debts have all been paid. I walked out of the station gates. The bright sunlight made it impossible to open my eyes. There's no peace like I'd predicted, only a hollow emptiness. 20 years later, my mother passed away. She died before 60, but her hair had long been white. When she left, she was still clutching that worn-out drawing frame. After the funeral, I returned alone to that old house. The house was empty. Sunlight through the window illuminated the dust covering the room. I pushed the old wooden bed, which made a creak-creak sound. In the deepest gap under the bed, I saw something wrapped in plastic cloth. The plastic had aged and was brittle, shattering upon touch. I pulled it out, slowly spreading it on the floor. It was a piece of drawing paper that had molded. Due to heavy moisture, it was covered in black and gray mold spots. I used a wet cloth to slowly wipe it clean. As colors appeared, I held my breath. This picture was drawn on the back of an old newspaper from years ago. The lines were chaotic and frantic, each stroke as if using all life strength. The content emerged clearly under the sunset. The center was a male student. His face was fierce, riding on a female student. His hands clutched the girl's throat. One of the girl's hands was pinned to the ground by another male student. That boy's shoulders were hunched, his face full of terror. And in a corner lay another male student. His head was bloody, unconscious. My gaze locked onto the center of the picture. The girl's other hand, the only free hand, was clutching a pencil. Over half the pencil was stabbed deep into the throat of the male student. Splotches of dark red on the paper were like a late sacrificial ritual. I sat on the ground, my whole body cold. It turns out Su Jia told a final lie in his suicide note. Zhongbin was not killed by him. It was Mother, who in that moment of desperation, personally stabbed through the demon's throat. When Su Jia woke up and saw blood everywhere, to prevent Mother from bearing the crime of murder, he smashed Zhongbin's face and buried the body. He took away that filthiest of names. He bore the titles of rapist and murderer all on his own shoulders. He didn't even dare let her be sober. Didn't dare let her remember that bloody afternoon. He guarded this secret, burying his whole life in the shadows. And my mother, was she really mad? I struck a match and threw it onto the drawing. The flame instantly swept away those ugly lines. Paper ash swirled in the wind, flying toward Peach Blossom Mountain. The end. Thank you everyone for listening to the end of today's story by Pineapple. I wish you all a truly joyful and happy day. I hope everyone will support Pineapple in the upcoming story series.